The winter evening pressed against the stained glass windows of St. Agnes Church, the kind of cold that made even warm light feel fragile. Eleanor sat at the end of the wooden pew, hands folded, listening as the vicar spoke of families stranded, young men seeking shelter, lives uprooted by violence in faraway places. His words lingered in the still air, and Eleanor felt them touch the hollow places inside her. For 3 years she had lived alone, her house echoing since Harold's death. Days folded into one another, tea gone cold, books left unread, curtains drawn too early. The offer of companionship rarely came, and when it did, it never stayed. Yet tonight, as volunteers whispered and took notes for placements, she found herself leaning forward. "Refugees?" she asked the woman beside her, a neighbor with sharp eyes. "They'll house them where they can. Families, older couples. You'd best stay out of it, Eleanor. It's not safe." The warning rolled off her like rain against glass. Safety had never cured loneliness. After the gathering, Eleanor approached the vicar. "I have a spare room," she said quietly, her voice wavering between fear and resolve. "If someone needs it." He looked at her, surprised, then softened. "There's a young man recently arrived. Turkish, very polite, though reserved. He has nowhere else to go." Her heart gave a small, frightened leap. The word young lingered. Yet she nodded. "Let him come." 2 nights later, the doorbell rang. Eleanor opened it to a thin figure carrying a worn rucksack. His dark eyes lifted shyly, a hint of exhaustion etched into his face. "I'm Mehmet," he said softly, his accent weaving unfamiliar music into the syllables. "Come in," Eleanor replied, stepping aside. As he crossed the threshold, the house seemed to change, no longer empty but brimming with a quiet, cautious breath. She led him to the spare room, neatly prepared with fresh sheets and a vase of daffodils she had cut that morning. "It's not much," she murmured, "but it's yours for as long as you need." Mehmet placed his rucksack down gently, as though afraid of disturbing the space. "It is more than I hoped for. Thank you." His gratitude was not loud but steady, like a candle lit against the dark. Later that evening, they shared tea in the kitchen. He spoke little, mostly listening, nodding with a faint, respectful smile. Eleanor found herself filling the silence, telling stories of Harold, of her garden, of how empty nights stretched too long. Mehmet's eyes did not drift. He seemed to hold her words as though they mattered. When she rose to clear the cups, he said quietly, "You are kind. People forget kindness." The words lingered as she washed the china. She could not remember the last time anyone had said them to her. That night, Eleanor lay awake, listening to the sound of a new presence in her home. Loneliness had cracked, just slightly, and something unfamiliar slipped through the open door. Tomorrow, she thought, they would share more. Morning light broke softly through lace curtains, scattering pale patterns across the kitchen table. Eleanor had risen early, as always, but this time she wasn't alone. She heard the careful tread of footsteps on the stairs, a hesitation in each step as if he were measuring his welcome. Mehmet entered the kitchen, shoulders slightly hunched. "Good morning," he said, his voice careful, almost fragile. "Good morning," Eleanor replied, setting another cup on the table. "I wasn't sure if you liked tea." He smiled faintly. "Tea is good. Back home, always tea." They sat together, steam curling from their cups. Eleanor asked small questions, not wanting to intrude. Where had he come from? Was he comfortable? Mehmet answered politely, his words trimmed short, but his eyes carried weight. "My family. They are not here," he said after a pause. "I think of them always." Eleanor reached across the table, her hand stopping midway before settling on the wood. "I understand," she whispered. "I think of mine too." For the first time, his smile deepened, though sadness still lingered. In the days that followed, Mehmet blended into the rhythms of the house. He was quiet, almost invisible at times, slipping shoes neatly by the door, folding blankets, offering to help with the shopping. Eleanor found comfort in his presence, the sound of another chair moving, another voice breaking the silence. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, they sat by the fire. Eleanor held an old photograph of Harold, the man who had shared her life for 40 years. She handed it to Mehmet without words. "Your husband?" Mehmet asked gently. Yes, he passed 3 winters ago. Mehmet studied the photo with respect before returning it. You loved him? Eleanor nodded, a lump in her throat. And I was loved. At least once. Mehmet's gaze lingered on her, unreadable, before he turned back to the fire. Slowly the small gestures grew into habits. He fetched her groceries, carried her bags, fixed the squeak in the garden gate. Eleanor noticed how neighbors stared as they walked together, whispers catching in the air. She told herself it was nothing, but inside, a restless flicker stirred. Was she wrong to open her home? At the Sunday service, a friend leaned close. You don't know him, Eleanor. These men, they have stories. Be careful. Her lips tightened. He's polite. He's grateful. More than most people have been to me lately. The friend shook her head. Sometimes politeness hides more than it shows. That night Eleanor repeated the words in her mind as Mehmet offered to cook. He moved deftly in her kitchen, chopping onions, adding spices she didn't recognize. The air filled with warmth and something unfamiliar, sharp yet comforting. As they ate, Eleanor asked, Do you miss home? Mehmet's eyes shadowed. Home is gone. Sometimes it is easier not to think of it. The answer left her unsettled. But when he laughed softly at her struggle with the fiery dish, the unease dissolved for a moment. She laughed too, feeling lighter than she had in years. Later, alone in bed, she thought of his smile and how it made the house feel alive again. Yet beneath the comfort, faint shadows remained, small, fleeting inconsistencies in his stories, like threads left loose. Eleanor told herself it was nothing. Still, she pulled the quilt tighter, as if guarding herself against a chill she couldn't quite name. The days folded into weeks, and Eleanor's home no longer echoed with emptiness. Mehmet's footsteps, his low voice, even the way he closed doors softly, all of it became part of her world. Yet in the warmth of routine, something else began to stir, a subtle shift she struggled to name. It started with small suggestions. You should not go to the market alone, Mehmet said one morning, his tone gentle but firm. I can carry for you, too heavy. Eleanor smiled, grateful. You're kind. The following week, when she picked up biscuits on special offer, Mehmet frowned. Not healthy. Better we eat fruit. His hand lingered a moment too long on the package before setting it back. She laughed nervously, agreeing, though a tiny flicker of resistance stirred inside. Her friends noticed the changes first. Over tea after Sunday service, Martha leaned across the table. Her voice lowered. Eleanor, he's always with you. Don't you think that's odd? Eleanor stirred her tea slowly. He's helping. It's company. Nothing more. Company can become control, Martha pressed. You don't know this man. He needed shelter. I had a room. That's all. But her words lacked conviction. At home, Mehmet seemed to sense the doubts creeping in. One evening, as Eleanor reached for the phone to call her daughter Claire, he placed a hand lightly on hers. You work too hard at family who do not visit, he said softly. I am here. Why call them when you have me? The remark stung, though his smile softened the edge. Still, she found herself setting the phone down, her voice lost in his certainty. Claire visited the next weekend, her eyes sharp as she studied Mehmet. Over lunch, she leaned close to her mother. He's charming, I'll give him that, but he's everywhere, Mum. Doesn't that bother you? He's been nothing but kind. Eleanor insisted, though her voice cracked under the weight of her daughter's gaze. Later that night, Eleanor heard them in the hallway. Mum's lonely, Claire whispered. You're taking advantage. Mehmet's reply was quiet, measured. I respect your mother, more than you know. You don't understand her life here. Silence followed, heavy and unyielding. When Eleanor appeared, Claire's eyes burned with worry. Mehmet's expression, however, was unreadable. The shift continued. Mehmet suggested which friends Eleanor should see, discouraged long afternoons at the library, claimed the evenings as theirs alone. She told herself it was affection, not restriction. Yet sometimes when she caught his gaze lingering too long, she felt like a bird in a gilded cage. One stormy evening, Eleanor woke to find the downstairs light still on. She found Mehmet at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. He slipped it into his pocket quickly, his expression shuttered. Couldn't sleep? She asked softly. His answer was delayed. I was thinking about tomorrow. But as he turned away, she glimpsed the shadow in his eyes. Her friends kept their distance, their disapproval clear. Whispers followed her in the church hall, foolish, desperate, blind. Eleanor smiled politely, hiding the ache those words left behind. Yet at home, when Mehmet brushed her shoulder as he passed, or thanked her with a quiet sincerity, the whispers lost their grip. She wanted to believe she had found something rare, something worth protecting. But at night, doubts clawed at her. His stories of exile and escape shifted slightly each time he told them. Small details didn't fit. She told herself trauma twisted memory. Still, unease seeped into her thoughts, as steady as rain against the window. Eleanor lay awake, staring into the dark, wondering if love was enough to silence every whisper. The storm had passed, but unease clung to Eleanor's house like damp air. Mehmet moved as he always did, quiet, attentive, polite, but she could not forget the flicker in his eyes that night. She caught him at the kitchen table. One evening, while folding laundry, Eleanor noticed Mehmet's phone left on the armrest of the sofa. Its screen lit briefly, buzzing with a message in Turkish. She froze. Mehmet rarely let it out of his sight. She hesitated, then picked it up. The words meant nothing to her, but curiosity pushed her to open the thread. Dozens of messages, some translated automatically, flashed across the screen. Money will come soon. She believes me. Another woman already waiting. Eleanor's breath caught in her chest. Her hand trembled as she scrolled further, the words tightening around her heart like a vice. Photos too, selfies he had taken, sent to someone else, always smiling, always affectionate. A floorboard creaked. She dropped the phone onto the cushion, just as Mehmet stepped into the room. His eyes went to the phone immediately, then to her face. For a moment, silence pressed between them like a blade. You looked? His voice was quiet, but sharp beneath the softness. Her throat closed. It buzzed. I didn't mean to. He crossed the room in 2 strides, picking up the phone with deliberate calm. His expression was unreadable, but his jaw tightened. You think bad of me now? Eleanor swallowed hard. The messages, they didn't sound. He cut her off, his tone low, urgent. They are lies. People back home, they use me. They ask for money. I owe them. I cannot say no. It is shame. Her chest tightened. And the other woman? Mehmet's eyes glistened. He sat heavily in the chair opposite, running a hand over his face. I told you my family is gone. Not all gone. One woman, she tried to help me before. She betrayed me. These people send messages with her name. They laugh at me. You don't understand what it is to be hunted, Eleanor. His voice broke. A single tear slipped down his cheek. Eleanor's anger softened against her will. She reached across the table, her hand hovering before touching his. I shouldn't have looked. I'm sorry. He closed his fingers around hers, trembling. Do not doubt me. You are the only one who has shown me kindness. Without you, I am nothing. The words burrowed deep. She wanted to believe him, wanted to silence the ugly whispers clawing at her mind. He looked so fragile, so broken, that she convinced herself it must be true. That night, Eleanor lay in bed replaying his words. A guilty weight pressed down on her. Had she betrayed him by prying, or had she glimpsed something he was desperate to hide? The following days returned to quiet routine. Mehmet cooked, mended, laughed softly at her old stories. Yet sometimes when he turned away, she caught a flicker in his eyes. Something harder, colder, gone before she could hold it. One afternoon, as she watered her plants, her daughter called. Claire's voice was sharp. Mum, I've been looking into him. Something doesn't add up. He isn't who he says he is. Eleanor bristled, Mehmet's tear-stained face flashing in her mind. Stop it, Claire. He's suffered enough. He needs trust, not suspicion. Mum, Claire warned, you're being blinded. Eleanor hung up before doubt could rise again. She looked toward the garden, where Mehmet stood smoking quietly, his profile outlined by fading sunlight. Her chest ached with conflicting truths, one written in messages, the other in tears. And in that fragile balance, She chose silence. The days grew longer, but peace in Eleanor's home began to fracture. Small things disappeared first. A silver brooch Harold had given her on their 30th anniversary. The cufflinks he wore to church. She searched drawers, retraced steps, but the items were gone. When she asked Mehmet, he shook his head calmly. You misplace. Memory sometimes plays tricks. His smile was gentle, his tone reassuring, yet something in his eyes made her uneasy. One morning she opened her jewelry box to find her mother's pearl necklace missing. Panic surged through her. She confronted him at the breakfast table. Mehmet, my pearls, they're gone. He looked up from his tea, his expression unreadable. Maybe stolen before, or maybe you lost them. You forget sometimes. Her lips trembled. I don't forget something like that. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You doubt me again, after everything? The words cut deeper than she expected. Her throat tightened with shame. I'm sorry, she whispered, though the hollow in her chest deepened. Later that week, Claire returned. She walked into the kitchen, her phone in hand, her face pale with anger. Mum, I have proof. Eleanor's stomach sank. Proof of what? Claire placed her phone on the table. An article glowed on the screen. Police warning, romance scam spreading through Europe. Victims, mostly older women. They describe a Turkish man, using different names. Charming, polite, makes them believe he loves them, then drains their savings. Eleanor's breath caught. The photo was grainy, but unmistakable. Mehmet. No, she whispered, pushing the phone away. Not him. Claire grabbed her hand. Mum, please, it is him. He's not a refugee. He's a predator. Tears welled in Eleanor's eyes. She shook her head, memories crashing. His soft gratitude, his trembling confession, the night he said, without you, I am nothing. Could all of it be lies? Mehmet had entered then, carrying groceries. He paused at the sight of them, huddled together. His eyes narrowed. What is this? Claire stood tall. I know who you are. His gaze flicked to Eleanor. For a moment silence thickened, then he smiled faintly as though the accusation amused him. People talk lies. They don't know me. But you, Eleanor, you know. Eleanor's heart twisted. She wanted to scream at him, demand truth, but the weight of her shame pressed harder. If Claire was right, she had invited danger into her home. If Claire was wrong, she risked betraying the only person who had filled her loneliness. I don't want to hear more, Eleanor said weakly, her voice cracking. Claire's face hardened. Then you'll lose more than pearls. After she left, silence wrapped the house in suffocating folds. Mehmet set the groceries on the counter, his movements calm, deliberate. You should not listen, he said softly, his accent thickening. Your daughter does not understand. She wants to take you from me. Eleanor closed her eyes, her mind spinning between Claire's warning and Mehmet's steady voice. Outside, dusk gathered, shadows lengthening across the garden. Inside, the cracks deepened, hairline fractures spreading across the fragile glass of her trust. The morning began like any other. Eleanor rose to find the kitchen quiet, the kettle cold. Mehmet's shoes were gone from the mat. She waited, telling herself he had gone for milk, or bread, or perhaps a walk, but as the hours stretched into silence, dread pooled in her stomach. She searched the house. His rucksack was missing. So were her bank cards. The drawer where she kept emergency cash lay empty. Her breath came sharp, shallow. She stumbled to the phone, her hands shaking as she dialed Claire. He's gone, she whispered. Everything's gone. Claire arrived within the hour, her anger swallowed by grim sympathy. I told you, Mum. I told you. Eleanor's eyes burned. Don't say it, not now. Together, they went to the police. A weary officer took their statement, his tone steady but practiced. You're not the first. He's used different names across counties, even countries. Turkey, Germany, France. Now here, it's an organized scam. He finds lonely women, gains their trust, then leaves with everything. The words struck like blows. Eleanor sat rigid, staring at the grainy mugshot. The officer slid across the desk. The face was Mehmet's, yet not the same eyes, but colder, unmasked. "We'll file the report," the officer continued. "But truth is, these men vanish quick, rarely caught. Best you can do is protect yourself now. Protect herself." The phrase felt cruelly hollow. What was there left to protect? At home, Claire tried to stay, but Eleanor asked her to leave. She needed silence, needed to sit with the wreckage. When the door closed, the house groaned with emptiness once more. She wandered from room to room, each corner holding his shadow. The chair he favored by the fire, the mug he claimed as his own, the faint trace of cologne on the spare room sheets. Every piece of him remained, yet he was gone, and so was everything he had taken. Eleanor sat at the kitchen table, staring at her trembling hands. Loneliness had driven her to open the door. Love, or the illusion of it, had blinded her to the cracks. Now betrayal sat heavy in her chest, heavier even than grief. She thought of Harold, of the steadiness of their life together. She had mourned his absence for years, yet Mehmet's departure left a different wound, sharp and shameful. Grief was natural. Betrayal was a prison. The days blurred. Neighbors whispered, their pity disguised as gossip. She overheard them at the grocer's. Poor Eleanor, fooled at her age. Their words scraped her raw, yet she forced a brittle smile. She would not let them see her broken. At night, the silence was unbearable. She sat in the dark, replaying every moment. The gratitude in his first smile, the softness of his voice, the tears he shed when she doubted him. Lies, all of them. Yet her heart ached as if they were real. Finally, unable to carry the weight, Eleanor opened her journal. Her pen hovered, then pressed to the page. "I must write this," she began. "Not for myself, but for others, to warn them. To confess how easily love can blind. I believed him because I needed to. I let him in because loneliness can be louder than reason." Her hand shook, ink smudging, as she continued. "He told me I was kind. He told me I was the only one who saw him. I see now it was never me he wanted, only what I could give. I was not loved. I was used. And the cost of that truth is everything I have." Tears blurred the words, but she wrote on, pouring her grief, her shame, her warning onto the page. When she finished, she closed the journal softly, as though sealing a wound. Outside, dusk spread across the garden. The gate Mehmet had once mended swung lightly in the wind. Eleanor rose, placed the journal on the kitchen counter, and poured herself a cup of tea. The steam curled upward, fragile against the evening shadows. She sipped slowly, staring into the empty chair across from her. The door she had opened was now shut, but the house did not feel safe. It felt haunted by trust misplaced, by love betrayed, by silence that would never again be kind.